Welcome, everyone. I'm Julie Bjelland, and I'm joined by Willow McIntosh. Hello.
Hey, Julie, great to be here.
Yes, and we are live in our sensitive empowerment community. I love you guys. I'm so glad you're here. Today's topic I picked, conscious living for HSP seeking wellness. And the reason I picked this topic is because I think that we're in a space as sensitive people, really as in the world right now. We've all been going through a lot over the last few years. And I know that sensitive people, we're even more impacted by that. And what I have come to learn after working with HSP so long as a psychotherapist and now in my community is that we are experiencing a lot of burnout. We're experiencing anxiety. We're experiencing health issues. And what I hear over and over again is, this concept of we're having trouble keeping up with the messages that we've received that we're supposed to live a certain way and we're supposed to be busy, constantly. And this is such a huge topic and there's so much to cover on this. But I think one of my goals for this topic is that I want to normalize that we need to do things differently as sensitive people. Everything that we do, everything that we eat, everything we're exposed to, it impacts us in a different way. And it's something that we have to start being conscious of. So what I've come to learn is, those of us that are feeling the most wellness are the ones who have really done things differently. It's out of the box. We live differently. We experience things differently. We need to think about what we're putting in our body, really in a concept of mind, body, and soul. And that's kind of where I want to go with this. And something interesting, Willow, I don't know if you've heard this before, but this is something that's really going to put it into perspective for a lot of us, is that we are exposed to more trauma in 24 hours now than we were in our entire lifetimes 25 years ago.
Wow, that's incredible. So I love everything. That we're going to be talking about today. It's such an amazing topic. But tell me more about that. So that is because of the general onslaught of sensory information from what's causing that?
Well, first of all, we didn't have the internet, right?
Right.
And the constant exposure, there's a sense too that our brains were created to just handle what was really going on in our own small communities. Now we are exposed to 24 hours, constant news sources, constant trauma. So many of us, we want to keep up with what's going on in the world. Maybe we're watching a lot of news or paying a lot of attention to everything going on. Also, the fact we've talked about this many times that the news sources almost only report the bad stuff that's going on in the world. And yet there is a lot of good stuff going on. And we have to really balance that a lot. And, it's just this constant exposure, the expectations of what we have in our jobs have changed now. I mean, oh my goodness, the people that had the most anxiety that when I used to work with clients in person was they'd come in and have the highest levels of anxiety were the ones that had this constant exposure to work, for example, this expectation that they have to have the notifications on all the time, that they have to be on call all the time. We've got parents that are working, have young ones at home. There's just so much stress going on, and we're really seeing an epidemic level of anxiety and burnout and health conditions beginning, especially in the population of sensitive people.
Understood. Yes, goodness me. It's clear how that is all happening. I love what you said at the beginning is the importance of finding our own way within all of this, what works for us individually. I feel that is so important for us as HSPs, and it's been certainly my experience having to figure out every area of life and what works for me and what doesn't work for me. When it comes to diet, when it comes to exercise, when it comes to how I work. For instance, I used to try to work out by following regimes that work for other people, and I would just be destroyed for a couple of days. I'm going to do anything, take me a week to recover. And then figuring out that actually, okay, so if I swim every other day and I like to do some core exercises on the other days, my body really likes that. Like, I don't get completely drained, but my body stays strong. So I don't get, musculoskeletal problems like backaches, that kind of thing. I just keep myself trim, but I'm not massively overdoing it. And it's the same with my diet. Like, it took me ages to figure out what my body actually likes to eat, what it doesn't like to eat. And so having these bespoke methods of lifestyle, I feel that's so important for us, especially to reduce this onslaught as another area, to reduce the onslaught of the day-to-day experiences, then how we can make that our own, that works in a way it works for us.
Yeah, you're so right, Willow. We've been talking about this a lot in the community too, the sense of how much we have to pay attention to what works for us and what doesn't. And that's what I mean by conscious living, that sense of really paying attention. If we eat something afterwards, how is it impacting us? And if we're slowing down enough to pay attention to that, we can read those subtle cues in our body. We have more activation in the insula part of the brain, which allows us to have a really strong level of conscious awareness, but we have to slow down enough to do that. And I want to, Alicia was saying something in the comments about that it's almost like we have to get permission to live differently. And I kind of want this episode to be everybody's permission. I want this to be all the sensitive people that are listening to this podcast out there in the world, and everybody in our community. Let this be your permission to do things differently. And it's about advocating for what we need. And it is such a huge piece of it. Everything I think about stuff all the time about, even like if you're out there and you're struggling with chronic health conditions, we need to look at things that are going on in our environment. Are you living, are you using a lot of chemicals in your home? We really do need to think about these things, because as the minority of the population, most things are not created for us. So most of the time we're seeing that, sensitive people are doing a lot of natural products, and they're doing more holistic types of supplements, and being really careful about what they put in their body and on their skin. And even just the fact of needing to live a meaningful life. That's a part of who we are. We have to do meaningful work in the world. If we're in, I've been hearing these horrible stories of people at work where, they're in meeting after meeting after meeting, and their boss is not giving them time off, and they're having, tons of exposure, social exposure, or just exposure to a lot of people around them all the time. And they're coming home and they're burnt out. And if they also have families at home, they're struggling with sleep, and they're getting misdiagnosed. We were just talking about this before we started recording, that we have to be careful about making sure that our medical and mental health practitioners know about the trait of sensitivity. I do have a letter that you can give to them that's free on my website. And it's really important that they do know about this trait. And if anybody is telling you, any kind of practitioner is saying that they don't believe you, or they're not going to listen to what your needs are, you need to find a different practitioner, because we've seen this over and over again in the sensitive population. We really need to have the support around us to be a part of our wellness. And a lot of that is us doing a lot of research. Like, how many of us have, I'm just looking at our videos right now, how many of us have done lots of research on what works for you and what doesn't in your life, right? It just like health-wise and otherwise. And I think it's such an important aspect of our experience in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well said. Yes. I think it's so important for us to remember that what works for the majority of the population may not work for us, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that, it just because something seems to work for others doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work for us. And also that we are going to be differently affected by things that are on the market. So when we're consuming things, whether it's food, as you say, skincare products, whatever it may be, all the advice that's out there around diet, is we've really got to figure out what feels right for us. Like I can remember eating when I was younger. I used to love eating these pickled Monster Munch. Alicia, you probably know these in the UK. They're like a salt and vinegar crisp. But when I used to eat a packet of them, my whole brain and head used to kind of like squeeze in with all the chemicals that were in there. I used to say to my friends around me, like, are these giving you like a really weird headache? My friends would no. What are you talking about? Crisps don't give you a headache. I was like, these things are really like messing with me. And it took me a while to realize that, some chemicals in things really do affect me. And it will be the same if I try different, like products, whether it's, cosmetics, that kind of thing with weird chemicals in there. So I think it's an example of what works for everyone. It doesn't work for us, and that's absolutely okay. And it doesn't mean that we are meant to be, expecting ourselves to undertake all of these different, whether it's stress at work or the way other people work. It has to be bespoke for us in every area, I think.